The following podcast may contain words, phrases, themes, and/or situations that some may consider offensive or triggering. You have been warned.
What you want, what you want. Come on. Come.
Welcome to the Lazy Geeks Solo Edition. I'm your host, Steven Vargas, a podcast where I take a look at some of the chaos in our culture and shake my fist at the clouds. We're thinking so you don't have to. Welcome, everybody. This is the start of the latest reboot of the podcast. I know. I've done this 3 times this year? Well, this would technically be the 3rd time. However, this one is super cool, but I'll explain more about that later on in the episode. Just a reminder, we are $90 away from our goal of moving our blog to another self-hosted company. This is huge. Now, if we fail to garner that $90, we'll be forced to move back to our old free WordPress.com blog, and that's just something I'm not thrilled about. So, if you could help a brother out and donate to help us move before our contract is up, we would greatly appreciate it. Oh, and on a side note, I would like to thank Sinson, Mel, and Aaron for donating to help Oliver get his food and other necessities for the next month or so. He really appreciates you while he's over there napping on a full stomach. And just so you know, we're always accepting donations for all the shows on the Lazy Geeks Network. And if you would like to get a shout out for your donation, head over to lazygeeks.com/donations for more details on how to do so. Now that we got all the housekeeping out of the way, we'll be right back with more after this. Are you tired of screaming into the void when hearing people discussing movies? Maybe you watched a YouTube video where they got all the facts surrounding the film wrong, don't understand the proper definition of plot holes, lazy writing, or how reshoots work. Maybe hearing people using the word woke so much that it's lost all meaning. That's what the Disgruntled Cinephile is for. I'm Steven Vargas, and I will take you weekly into topics of online film culture, the proper definition of terms like cult classic, and how gatekeeping anti-intellectualism should have come up with a more descriptive word than just woke. In the process, I'll discuss movies that I love, as well as new films, and I'll drop context for older films that people using only surface-level intellect miss. Join me every Thursday on The Disgruntled Cinephile on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. Nirvana is overrated. Now that I have your attention, Nirvana was and is overrated. And I'm sure you'll find more people that agree with that sentiment than people that don't. And let me explain what I mean. Back in the day, I started renting books from the library. And since I didn't have internet at home, I had reserved some afternoons using the local library Wi-Fi. One day, I realized that this magical place had physical books around. So it seemed only reasonable that I would peruse the aisles of these quote-unquote physical books. And after some mindless scanning, I noticed a name that I hadn't seen in a while. Chuck Klosterman. Not because he doesn't write books anymore, but it just had been a long time since I went into a bookstore. He's written 7 nonfiction books and 2 novels. Obviously, he's written for many major publications. But to me, he's simply an intellect who discusses a lot of pop culture from a Generation X point of view. And I was introduced to his writings when I was working at an e-commerce company back in 2008. Sex, drugs, and Cocoa Puffs hit me at the right time. Someone at work had left it sitting on one of the computer terminals. I noticed it and read the jacket. It seemed interesting. However, I didn't want to simply steal someone's book. I mean, what if they came back looking for it? So, I decided to borrow it during working hours. The company allowed us to read, do schoolwork for college kids, or listen to music. It was a chat-based, quote-unquote, call center for people that needed help for certain clients across the North American continent and the UK. And my days proceeded with me working at my desk, reading this book incessantly. Not to be a dick, I would place it back on the desk where I found it every night, in case the book's owner wanted to take it home. This went on for a couple of weeks. Finally, I grabbed it and left it at my desk. Eventually, I finished the book, and it spoke to me, my sensibilities, humor, and view of Gen X culture. And I wanted to find more, but I couldn't. This was before Amazon and torrents. Now, jump to a couple of months ago. I found 2 of his books on the shelf at the library. And for the first time since elementary school, I rented 2 books from the library and took them home. It was a great moral achievement for me. And to be completely honest, I probably could have found them online, but their internet is so slow and I didn't have the patience to wait. The first book was The 90s. It's his latest book, released in early 2023. Now, Klosterman breaks down the 90s using the notion of the Mandela effect, a theory that postulates that people believe things that happened in a way that didn't really happen. It stems from people believing that Nelson Mandela died in prison and they saw his funeral on television years before he was released from a South African jail. Now, stripping away the nostalgia factor or our lack of desire to find out if any of this was true, many people don't understand what life was like before the internet. You couldn't find random pieces of information within seconds, watch retro music videos, trailers for movies you saw as a kid, or find out if a TV show you remember was real or just a fever dream. And how does this relate to Nirvana being overrated? Well, it's because he believes it too. It was less that raw punk sound that we experienced in the 80s, but more of a pop version of it. Kurt Cobain even said that about his music. And while the bands were real, they were just simply plucked from the Seattle scene. Much like Christina Aguilera and Mandy Moore were given deals to capitalize on the popularity of Britney Spears. Sometimes it were producers that wanted to double dip their own cash cow, as Maurice Starr did when he created New Edition and replicated it with New Kids on the Block, or as Lou Pearlman did with Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. Now, much of it comes down to Kurt Cobain's suicide. Had he never killed himself, would he still be an icon? The epitome of the 90s? Would he still be the pinnacle of grunge if he made it into his 50s? Check out some of the bands from the time. How many of them are still selling out stadiums, much less even together? The same can be said that Nirvana killed traditional rock music. And Nirvana was born out of a cynic depressive with deep-rooted mental health issues. And that isn't to say that some, if not all, of their music was good, but a masterpiece? I had just graduated high school at the start of the summer of '91. Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit was about to be on continuous rotation that summer. Now, I dug the song, but I never thought the band was life-changing. My thoughts were more that it was overplayed. And being first out the gate helped a lot. And in the 2020 culture, saying that I don't like Nirvana would be the equivalent of saying that I hate grunge music. As the meme, I like pancakes, so you hate waffles then? Or that TikTok video of a black woman calling Drew Barrymore a racist because she was dancing in the rain mirroring a person of color's video, citing cultural appropriation of a video made by two black men earlier that year doing the same thing. And it's safe to say she didn't have much support for her viewpoint from anyone, particularly the black community. Now, this is a long-winded way of saying that I don't hate people that do love Nirvana. The band did not define the decade. And some would say that the 90s began with the Berlin Wall falling and ended with the destruction of the Twin Towers. And as you can see, it doesn't fit into the number scheme. The wall fell in 1989 and the World Trade Center attacks happened in 2001. Nirvana was a good band with many good songs. Personally, I thought Pearl Jam was a better band. However, I think the populace from the time revere them simply because they were the first out the gate. And the early demise of its frontman helped canonize him as a saint. To many, their introduction into the zeitgeist was when the 90s began. Now, there is a firm belief, shared only by me, that if any other band broke out at that time, would they be held in such a high regard? If Pearl Jam or Soundgarden dropped their first song in 1991. The 90s was when music made a seismic shift in pop culture. Gone were the hair bands, pop carefree music, and Eurosynth. Enter the era of grunge, R&B, and gangster rap. And if you would like to read more pieces like this, you can visit thelazygeeks.com, and we'll be right back after this quick break. Hey there, podcast listener. Stephen Vargas here, host of the Lazy Geeks, Great American Shit Show, and my latest, the Gen X Construct. For the next couple of months, we are fundraising to help pay some bills. We have reached that time of year where we need to pay for renewals of the domain and hosting of the site. And for many years, I've funneled the cost to keep them going. One of the main purposes of these kind of ads were to make these shows and sites self-sustaining. And we don't need a lot, but every little bit helps. If we exceed the amount we need, we'll use it to upgrade some of the equipment that needs to be upgraded, like headphones, monitors, mouse, and maybe move to paid programs like Adobe Audition. I know they're the evil empire, but honestly, I like it better than Audacity. And maybe it can replace my hand-me-down computer chair that slowly sinks when I sit in it for more than 5 minutes. If you know, you know. Now, if I don't get that much, I can obviously get the bougie food for Oliver, maybe even treats or some toys. He deserves it. And if you would like to help us out during this time, you can click on the various links in the show notes for PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, or Zelle, or you can go to the website, thelazygeeks.com/donations, and get more details there. All donations will get a shout out on all the shows, and we appreciate you and hope you can help a brother and his cat out. Now, back to the show. As I teased earlier in the episode, there are more changes going around here. When I posted about 2026 going to be a year of change, I guess I wasn't kidding. I started 2026 having moved to Arizona, but that actually started in November 2025 because I would end up homeless in 2026 had I not. But by the grace of some relatives, they offered me a place to stay, and I'm sure they immediately regretted it. Now, while I had been touting changes for the last couple of weeks, I had to make sure my ducks were in a row before I began saying something. Some of you may know that I've been doing the Lazy Geeks podcast since 2010, alongside my friend and co-founder, Adam Riley. And if you go back and listen to any episode prior to 2022, you can hear what we used to talk about. And we ended that version of the show in December 2022. Since then, Adam's been off living his life with his family in Arizona. And after some careful consideration, Adam Riley will return to the podcast some 3.5 years later. Of course, that doesn't come without some caveats, but before we get into that, I want to give you some backstory. The decision to end the show in its old form was a combination of things. On a personal level, Adam was tired of doing the news. We had done a show called The Truly Pointless Podcast, which was a free-flowing format. And on the main show, we were easing up on the news content because Adam really wasn't feeling it anymore. And given that we had been doing it for 12 years of the same thing, it kind of made sense. And as I said during my announcement, the news is gearing toward AI 24/7. And I didn't want to talk about it. And even the news that I was going into was involving it. And after 25 years of that sort of news, it was all the same. Change some names around, but you're still reporting on the same things we did in 2010. And with that and my job insecurity, it was difficult keeping my internet running. Adam living in Arizona and I was still in LA at the time, it made it nearly impossible to record the show without the internet. I knew it was coming early in 2023, so the decision was made to end it while we could. As much as I tried to continue doing it solo, my depression made it hard to do the show. I tried several times, but it just wasn't there. Even when I made the choice to do it in 2026, it was difficult to find the drive. Add that to the repetitive nature of the news I was discussing. It was a struggle. Then, while I was going through my birthday depression, I had an epiphany at 2 a.m. Well, it's probably more like 2:12 a.m. Where I was staying now has stable internet. Plus, I'm in Arizona, so I would only need to deal with one time zone. And maybe we could do it again. But I would have to make some changes to appeal to him for the return. So instead of doing it weekly, we would move it to bi-weekly, thus making it less of an issue with his family, which was usually the source of many of our problems with recording. Plus, not structure it around the news. Yeah, news topics can filter in if it's something we both have an opinion on. Plus, we would record a full week in advance. So if we had to adjust for something, it wouldn't be a big impact on the episode's release. Surprisingly enough, the fucker agreed. As I was excited about the reteam, another thought creeped into my mind, because of course it would. Do I really want to make it a bi-weekly show? Then the thought came in that I could do a solo show during the gap weeks. Kind of what I was doing before, but picking a solo topic that I want to discuss, vent, or just bitch about. And I've seen other podcasts do that exact same thing, and I wondered if I should give it a try. And this is the concept you're listening to right now. Adam liked the idea and allows me to do a deep dive into something that I want to speak about, but it doesn't commit me to a weekly schedule. Many of the topics won't be time sensitive, so I don't have to pick a topic from that week to discuss. And not to mention that many of the topics I would discuss need context. Why is it important now? When did it start? This isn't all new. This, in conjunction with my disgruntled cinephile podcast, I could do batches of episodes and scatter the releases. And still provide me time to do my Great American Shit Show. I find it important now more than ever that context is missing from much of the discourse we see online. Not to mention, there is always something someone throws up that tries to derail the conversation. You can talk about someone, but there is always someone in the comments that says, "Who cares? They're blank anyways," which isn't helpful. And just because you feel a certain way about them shouldn't stop you from knowing more about someone or something. As a favorite fictional newscaster once said,
"It's not just an environmental story. Everywhere I look, people are dressed up in costumes screaming about how bad government is."
What's your position?
That people should know what they're screaming about.
I figure this would draw in a balance of enjoying two goofballs talking about whatever, yet the next week you have a deep dive into something that has been bothering me or not many people are talking about. and whether it be about election conspiracies to unhelpful people on the internet. And I am still on my position that I meant earlier in the year. Given how social media has made more people idiotic, toxic, or just plain stupid, I'm on a mission to civilize.
Because I'm on a mission to civilize.
How's it going so far?
Progress is slow, but I'm in it for the long haul.
Why have people become bootlickers? Since when did people making $35,000 a year defend billionaires that don't give a single shit about them? The new podcast will have something for both. You want to listen to a podcast that is funny and lighthearted? Next week's episode will be for you. If you like the old deep dive into topics that isn't on YouTube and doesn't use AI to read its scripts, you have the episode after that. Hey, maybe you will enjoy both and keep coming back every week. Wouldn't that be cool, huh?
Come on.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like what I'm doing here, you have two ways to help. One, if you would like to make this show self-sustaining, buy me a Dr. Pepper or feed my cat his bougie food. You can make a one-time donation through either PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, or Zelle. Check the show notes for details and links. Or two, you can share us on social media or review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. This will make the algorithm gods promote our show to an unsuspecting public. You can check out all of my content, including my other podcasts, at thelazygeeks.com. You can also stalk me on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, and TikTok at thelazygeeks, all one word. And if you're old school, email me at thelazygeeksnetwork@gmail.com. So that's it for me this week. Until next time, we're thinking so you don't have to.